first unfolded, and everyone went a bit kabuki theater when it came to the spaghetti westerns, and they're trying to depict it. That's actually how it was, because the amount of servitude was served on a silver platter. But then bandits running loose were glorified, such as Billy the Kid. And so that was just a beta. If you let everyone loose in the cosmic landscape to colonize it, and it's just like fish out of water flopping, it's gonna be more disaster than what the wild, wild west had succumbed to. And it's not arguing how everyone's unique. So quantum nature is hard because there's a lot of different values, and when they're all put together as a collective, there are these phenomenon that occur, or most likely from the larger into the smaller scale, of which in cosmic scales we don't know a lot of the grand scheme of fixtures. Beta. If you let everyone loose in the cosmic landscape to colonize it, and it's just like fish out of water flopping, it's gonna be more disaster than what the wild, wild west had succumbed to. For physics attribute, the standpoint of there are these things that are overlying in the universe that we don't quite know of, dark energy and dark matter, and they're the bulk of the universe, representing 92% of it. And the fact that we can't pinpoint exactly what it is only decals what larger than life attributes such as divine intervention or supernatural phenomenon is a part of, and that they can't be in different places at different times. When in a movie, if you're cutting the scenes together with different times but the same person at a different time, like a different day, and then you're watching the seconds turn into different days where the person has a different body construct, it's gonna make for a rough appeal to the tonality of the shot. And it's not arguing how everyone's... So quantum nature is hard because there's a lot of different values, and when they're all put together as a collective, there are these phenomenon that occur, or most likely from the larger into the smaller scale, of which in cosmic scales we don't know a lot of the grand scheme of fixtures. And so when you're capitalizing in the smaller realm, the microscopics around the atom, it starts enacting these things when you have strongholds such as pictures, frames, you know, like quanta is a basic box of a value. You're boxing values, especially in closed loop systems. And this is where law and art, if you're understanding taxes really well, it's, you know, a whole world of difference when it comes to battling corruption. And so there's one strong thing like a monolith. If you've got that in your hair, it's almost like a rat tail in the back, because if you care well for your hair, it's gonna follow these mainframes, such as like a a rat tail hanging back. The free flow of the hair will actually like round about the edges on that. Or if you've got yourself two like giant rat tails on either ends of your hair in the back, that's almost as like a picture frame or two slits. And then the double slit experiment, it's like a picture frame except with two slits, and then the two slits are the two sides, but the equivalence of those two slits is making the forefront and the backdrop the equal lateral horizontals to those two slits. And what the makeup of that is, quantum nature does it fantastically. If you set up a screen and you're pulsating a beam, it's going to make a fixture that encloses that value. and that's what throws everyone off, because there are a whole bunch of these tiny dots that are shot through, and instead of those tiny dots shot through, they end up as beams, a whole bunch of barcodes, if you will. And this is why QR coding is really interesting, because it has to do with barcodes that have been cut up and draped up inside vertical dots, you know, like a line put straight vertically from a bird's eye view. It's just a mere dot. What's really interesting in nature or life itself is when there's these odd angles. If those odd angles start picking up steam, they start weighing heavily on structures that are not built well. This can be like an axle broken on a wagon during the Oregon Trail if people are pushing their trail to the limit, you know, exceeding their line for more than it actually is, because they're trying to get to that gold rush as quickly as they can, and then their axle breaks because it was just a makeshift. So how would you get ready to colonize Cosmos? Well, start with Peanuts, the Motley Crue band. These guys said they took an hour on their makeup, and you know, if that was good or not, you be the judge. Then it took me like 15 minutes to straighten my hair, and there's certain things that like you find in details of these magnificent long-term things that are seemingly meaningless. Well, it's a science in itself at some point, the difference between art and law. And so like with the Tin Man, he had problems like on the corners of his elbows. He needed an oil can to grease the skids, or elbow grease if you will. And so the same thing with hair. You can put the parts where you try and squeeze it back from, like tucking hair behind your ear. If you get a whole bunch of like oil can, the Tin Man, extra lubricant, you know, with some spray, it's actually like that thing that could be attributed to sailing and how many chaotic dystrophies in that line. So if you have an embankment and an enclosure, they both are fundamental things needed to have quantum nature. And quantum nature is something so fantastic that it is completely unfinished. And it's no surprise that in order to tackle something like that, it's almost stigmatic even referencing, because the best of the best, the science community, is next to nothing when it comes to actually grasping the totality of it. And so when you've got like your hair, it's great because it deals with a whole bunch of tiny pieces of hair, but as a collective it can imitate things like a picture frame. If you've got two strong ends on either side, it's almost as if the rest of the hair on either side, from top to bottom, from those two prominent ends, are an enclosure to those, as a picture frame would have it be equilateral from each end, versus just a stinger. If you've got your hair in the back and you've got one stinger going down, it's almost a ponytail, except it's more embedded to the back of the neck. This would be the difference of all the hair about it collecting en route to it, almost as if a double slit experiment would have the interference pattern before it hits the screen being dialed up as such. Things that are bad are not original, because it's like when it's time to shine and then someone else takes the light, it can be just looked at as non-purposeful. In cameras, like if people have video footage and they're making movies and then they have a scene that's taken place in a different day, it takes out what it actually is because the person has changed. And so The Boy Who Cried Wolf, once again, this wolf inside fairy tale is phenomenal. But if the science community was this boy who cried wolf, they would be putting themselves over for gatekeepers. Gatekeepers being something. And so when you're capitalizing in the smaller realm, the microscopics around the atom, it starts enacting these things when you have strongholds such as pictures, frames, you know, like quanta is a basic box of a value. You're boxing values, especially in closed loop systems.